is Tammy Nikia Hibbert. I am 48 years old and was born with a ganglioma brain tumor. My goal is to talk and meet others that have the same issue, knowing that you're not by yourself. My first issue was when I was 10 years old. My parents got a divorce and we moved to Arizona where my mom's family was. It was during a weekend and I decided to walk to school around the corner from the house and play on the bars in the play area. Well, I was swinging upside down and all of a sudden I woke up and I was on the ground. Nobody was with me, so I still got up and I walked home. I wasn't sure what happened and I thought I just fainted. After a few years went by and I was visiting my grandmother because my mom was in the hospital. When my brother and I were sleeping at little Grammy's, she received a call in the middle of the night. I heard the phone ring, so I got up and had to use the restroom. And the next thing I know, I was waking up between the toilet and the sink. Again, I wasn't sure what happened to me, thinking I fainted again. By the time I got up from the ground, my grandmother knocked on the bathroom door, and I got up, opened the door, and she told me my mom had just passed away. Well, in the year of 1993, I was 23 years old, and I was working for a mortgage company, and it was 5 o'clock p.m. I turned off the computer, I was standing up, grabbing my purse, and the next thing I know, I was waking up on the floor. It was very frustrating, wondering, why am I experiencing this? It's the third time around. When I woke up, there were people from an ambulance ready to put me on the gurney bed and took me to the hospital. Once they got me there, I told nurses and doctors what I have experienced 3 times throughout my life. They wanted to take x-rays of my brain. After wondering all those years why I am fainting, I wasn't. That's when the doctors told me I've had grand mal seizures and I was born with a brain tumor. As soon as I was told about the grand mal seizures, the doctors put me on seizure medicine called Dilantin. The doctors and I continued the discussion about the size of the brain tumor and options I had. The tumor I had was really small, smaller than the pinky fingertip. He told me I can wait, see what happens with it, or get a biopsy, sticking a needle in the skull and the brain and have it examined of what kind of a tumor it is, or have the whole tumor taken out. Well, I decided, since it was so small, to wait and to see what happens. Again, I was told I was probably born with it, and since it's so small, then we will look at it again in the next few months. Well, when I was 26 years old, I met my husband. When we were dating, he had come over and I was making lunch. And the next thing I know, I'm waking up in his arms. I had another grand mal seizure in my kitchen. So I contacted the doctor, and he had added Keppra medicine with the Dilantin I was taking for my seizures. So I started those together. Not sure if you know the difference with grand mal seizure and a petite seizure. Grand mal seizures, your brain pretty much mentally turns off. It falls to the ground. You start shaking, hoping to not hurt yourself or anybody else, and eventually come out of it after a couple of minutes. It takes a good 2 to 4 hours to feel like yourself, but then you feel depressed for a good 24 hours. That's when you need to pull yourself together and talk to the man above. Petite seizures are when you feel the brain tingling and you are not all there, but still able to have your eyes open and know where you are. When you're with others, you know you still want to be in the conversation that you're already having with others, but the words that are coming out of your mouth are not the words you were planning on saying. You weren't as tired as grandma's seizures, but still you need to try to pull yourself together and try not to get frustrated, but it's hard. You keep asking why. Why do I keep having these seizures? After 2 years, my husband and I got married in November of 1998. We had a house built and we're still in it. My husband had 2 children from his first marriage, and we took them in whenever they wanted to be over. He and I were always talking about possibly having children of our own, but not sure if it would be safe to have 1 or 2. The doctors had told us that we try to have a child. He or she might be born, though, without an arm or a leg because of the seizure medicine. So my husband and I agreed to go on the birth control pills until we make a final decision. Within the next couple of years, I was experiencing petite seizures here and there. Well, after a couple of years of marriage, I was wondering why I was missing my period. So I went to the store and bought a pregnancy test and brought it home. I did what I needed to do to find out if I was pregnant or not. All of a sudden, I was sitting on the edge of my bathtub, crying my eyes out, looking at the little test, and it said, I'm pregnant. I was pretty much crying because of happiness, is what it was. My husband was wondering why I was crying, and I told him this is a blessing. I was questioning, though, how can it be? How can I be pregnant when I was taking birth control pills? My seizure meds took over my birth control pills, and I was pregnant. During my whole pregnancy, I did not feel sick at all. Did not experience a seizure at all either. Thank goodness. I always craved pizza, and I still do. I was able to still work and exercise. There was another issue during pregnancy that wasn't hurting, but eventually had to deal with it too. It was my teeth and my gums. Due to seizure meds and being pregnant, my gums extremely swelled up. I tried to keep my teeth and my mouth really clean during pregnancy, and then afterwards dealt with my gums. July 2001 arrived, and it was time for me to give birth to our son. It was a very long process, but successful, and we were very blessed with a healthy baby boy with all the limbs. Amen. After a couple of months went by, it was time for me to get an MRI, and the same day see my neurologist for results. Every time I went to the doctor's office, I sat down next to him to look at the x-rays. It helps to understand where, what size, and what it actually looks like. Well, being pregnant increased the size of the brain tumor. This was a 7-year gap after I found out for the first time that I had a brain tumor. At this time, it was 8 millimeters, and it was time to have it removed. So it was planned to go in for surgery 6 months after I had my son. I decided ahead of time to braid my hair because I knew I wouldn't be going home for several days and didn't want my hair to become so tangled. So December 2001, the neurosurgeon's assistant put me out, shaved 1 to 2 inches wide from the top of the head halfway down in front of my left ear. When the doctor was done removing the tumor and all other cells around it that weren't discolored but could eventually change color, he used a titanium plate to close the skull with screws. When waking up out of it, you didn't feel the metal plate at all. Thinking you would, but not, and I didn't. It was a very long surgery, but I made it out of there and healed up within weeks. The results from the tumor were benign. Amen. Now it was time for me to have surgery on my gums because they were so swollen, it needed to be done. very embarrassing. Um, so that was odd, but I had to do it, and I'm glad I did. Ever since I had to deal with this, I've taken very good care of my teeth and my gums. Amen. After so many months and weeks, it was time to get back with life, being mom, stepmom, wife, and becoming active. My goal was to keep busy and to think positive. As the year went by, I was getting MRIs every 3 months for a couple of years, and then 6 months, and then every 6 months, hoping to not notice another brain tumor, but eventually another brain tumor appeared towards the middle of the brain. So again, it was really small, and I decided to do the same thing and wait to see what it does. Again, it was another 7 years like before, and it was the same size as the first one. So it was June 2008 for the time to actually have it removed. My neurosurgeon went in the same area and removed it, plus some other cells around it. As a neurosurgeon was going in to remove the tumor, he also had to touch my memory box. And I use simple words because I have a hard time understanding things at times, as well as using those big words. The surgeon's doesn't have that many choices to make when he sees discolored cells. Those are removed, but then there can be ones that have not changed color just yet, but eventually he removed those. So that's why they extend out a little past the whole tumor. So I was in the hospital for several days, again, and dealt with uncomfortableness, but knowing that I'm healed and going back home, I know is a total blessing. As for results, again, the tumor was benign. Amen. I always say to myself, things can be worse, so I just try to keep on smiling. Well, life continued. I got back into keeping myself busy, exercising, work, and have fun with my son, stepkids, and hubby. One morning, my husband agreed to go with me on a jog. He actually left before me, and I caught up with him. Well, wouldn't you know it, I ended up having a grand mal seizure on the sidewalk. I didn't even feel it. I dropped to the ground, and I was waking up on the concrete. And FYI, there's only been one time that I did not hit the ground when my husband caught me, but usually when I have a grand mal seizure, I've ended up on the ground, assuming I hit my head on concrete, tile, or carpet, but I've never had a sore head. It's odd, but it was amazing. So I ended up going in to see my neurologist and made my meds a little stronger. I was so tired of having a seizure and thinking I had them in control. Again, I tell myself things can be worse, but be thankful I am still alive. Well, after continuing every 3 months of MRIs, it eventually changed to 6 months. It was time to see my neurologist again for results, and then 1.5 years after my second surgery, we noticed another brain tumor, and that one was in the front left area. All I can do is pretty much cry, but telling myself to hang in there. I've dealt with the previous ones that have been removed. I can deal with this one also. This particular tumor, I believe, I had it for 4 to 5 years, because what happened was in March 2016 I was working, and all of a sudden I felt like I was having a migraine headache on the front left side of the brain. In the past, I didn't feel headaches at all, so that's why I was thinking I was having a migraine headache. I took an ibuprofen and the pain went away. A few days later, the pain came back. I ended up talking to a friend who's actually a neighbor,